The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to Tell Us Why, a podcast for the financial freedom community. If you're looking to succeed in your quest for financial freedom, make sure you join us every week as we, along with our guests, discuss different stories of success, how they were achieved, and how you can do the same. And of course, we ask them to tell us why. Here are your hosts, Jack and Mike.
Welcome to the Tell Us Why podcast. I am your host, Jack Dalrymple.
Trying to get it right.
Somebody was calling me out for not pronouncing the L in my last name. It's Dalrymple. Here alongside my co-host, Mr. Michael Ketchen. And today we are talking with Avery Carl. Avery is here to discuss her business, the ShortTerm Rental Shop, which is a real estate agency that focuses exclusively on working with short-term rental investors in markets located throughout the United States. Her book, Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth, right there for the people watching on YouTube, was published by Bigger Pockets and may even come up too.
I think we'll bring it up.
Probably.
Yeah,
once or twice maybe. But before we get Avery in studio, Mike, what's going on in the business?
Ironically enough, perfect timing. We just had our appraisal at our latest luxury Airbnb purchase. 4 months, close to close, trying to do a cash out refi on our holding out in Bozeman, and had a great conversation with the appraiser. She actually invests in short-term rentals herself.
Oh, really?
So we hit it out. She's going to be checking out Tell Us Why, and looking at a nice chunk of change to roll into the next one. What about you?
Well, just got back from Bozeman. Imagine that.
Yes.
Speaking of Airbnbs, I got an Airbnb working right now.
Yep.
Potentially trying to convince somebody.
Yep.
Cough, cough. But not fully agreed to yet, but we're working on it. Also trying to heavily researching VAs right now.
Yep.
Decided I don't want to work Mondays because I'm a contrarian, I guess. Everybody hates going to work on Mondays, so I just decided randomly that I don't want to work on Mondays. So I'm going to try to hire a VA, let them take over some of that, and
so maybe
outsource a little bit.
Say, ask the community if anybody out there's got great resources for VAs. Hit us up on the Instagram,
definitely.
or some big exciting news coming in a couple of weeks around the community. I think we're finally ready to roll that out. But,
Absolutely.
Before we do it, should we get today's guest going? Because I'm so excited for this.
I am excited.
I think we should. So you want to bring him in?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Are you sick of being treated like just another number by large insurance companies? Do you want a more personalized experience with somebody that you can trust? With Keith Monteith, that's exactly what you'll get. Keith is an experienced professional who can design an insurance plan tailored to fit your specific needs. With access to over 30 insurance carriers, Keith is able to shop numerous markets to find a price that works for you. So if you want an insurance agent that you can rely on and one that has your best interests at heart, then call or text Keith today on 978-241-2363. That's 978-241-2363. Keith Monty. He'll get you covered.
Okay, Avery Carl was named one of Wall Street Journal's top 100 and Newsweek's top 500 agents in 2020, and her team, the ShortTerm Shop, was named to the Wall Street Journal's top 50 teams in 2021. She and her team at the ShortTerm Shop focus exclusively on vacation rental and short-term rental clients. Avery has sold over $300 million in short-term rentals in 2021 and over $750 million since her start in 2017.
Big number.
As an investor herself with a portfolio of over 50 properties, Avery specializes in connecting with investors with short-term rentals with the highest ROI potential, and then training them to manage their short-term rentals from their smartphones from anywhere in the world. Sounds vaguely familiar. But Avery.
Thank you, Avery.
Thank you for being here. Welcome to the Tell Us Why podcast.
The fewest errors he's ever had in an intro through 35 episodes.
Mike told me to slow down. I was trying to go slow.
I was like, don't mess this up. She's a big deal. She's got a book.
I don't know why. I get so nervous. It's just like a nervous thing. I'm like shaking over here.
As you can see,
read.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun. So I'll jump into it and try to get this back on the rails.
Appreciate it.
Avery, seriously, thank you for being here. Shout out to Clay Helper, a guest we had on a couple weeks ago, the creative capitalist. He mentioned you put us in touch, and the synergies are there. I think, first and foremost, just thank you for being an entrepreneur who shares your knowledge, who's building something to basically give back. I think that's really what we're doing here. So first, thank you for that. And why don't you tell the people, we always like to start at where you're at in your business today and then work backwards. So what do you guys got going on? Because I know it's a lot right now.
Yeah, Yeah, it is a lot. Thank you guys so much for having me, first of all. And I think I need to update my one sheet because that was I think that was written in July of last year. So we actually sold 621 million in
awesome.
2021. So
Wow.
lots and lots and lots of short-term rentals going around. So as of right now, we have offices in 10 markets. We are opening up another one on Friday, Carolina Beach, North Carolina.
Congrats.
And yeah, thank you. Thank you. We also, in addition to the short-term shop, which is the real estate sales agency side, we also have the mortgage shop, which, surprise, surprise, does mortgages for our clients. And we've got, quite a few just education tools now out there and content surrounding short-term rentals. And yeah, I guess we can work backwards from there.
Yeah, and I've got about 5 things to jump into when we were looking into it. And I want to get to the why, but one thing I want to touch on that she just touched on, because again, here, we're trying to share resources. Avery just touched on her mortgage shop, and I think that's instrumental, because I remember when I got started in Airbnb, and I'm sure you went through the same thing, no one knew how to treat these rentals, no one knew how to treat these mortgages, and it was hard to obtain long-term debt. You had to get creative, you had to get out there. Can you touch on what you guys are doing with that, and why specifically that ties into the business model with short-term rentals?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're exactly right. Not all banks are created equal. Not all lenders are created equal when it comes to short-term rentals. Like if you go out, to like one of those major lending companies like Quicken Loans or Chase, Wells Fargo, you're probably just going to end up, your online lead is going to get routed to some random person in some random city that is just taking internet leads. And it's most probable that person does like 98% of primary home loans and doesn't do these types of loans, isn't really going to know how to jump through the hoops to get them done. So my initial foray into short-term rentals was I bought 5 over the course of a few years in the Smoky Mountains. And that is an area that is really its own little thing. Like everything, like 90% of the real estate that's ever been sold in that market has been specifically to be a vacation rental. So all of the local lenders in that market know how to do it because that's most of what they've ever done. Even before Airbnb existed, everything was a vacation rental. There were lots of those second home loans going around. So I started the mortgage shop with a partner who was with a local bank for years and years, who a lot of my clients used because she knew how to do it. And then we were opening up different markets in different areas. And rather than having to go source a local bank who knew what they were doing and offer the products that our clients needed in each market, we just said, okay, well, we'll just get licensed in all of these markets and all of these states. We already know what we're doing. We just have to plug it into a new market. So that's the way we did it, just because it is hard. So we wanted to make it easy for our clients.
Awesome. Added value and solving problems.
Yeah, every problem is an opportunity.
Yep. I like it. And on that note, looking back to where you started, obviously you guys are going a million miles now. You got all this going on. What is the motivation? What is the why behind taking all these big risks and taking this massive action?
For me, it is to buy more real estate so that I can we've been financially independent for years now, so we could have quit actually selling real estate at any time. But for me, it has created the financial independence that owning real estate has created for me is the freedom of time to be able to hang out with my kids, hang out with my family. And even though working with a lot of clients can be really difficult at a lot of times, just because there's a lot of fires to put out all the time, it is very, very rewarding when a client reaches out a few months after closing and says, hey, we bought 1 house with you or 2 houses or 3, whatever they bought. And I just wanted to let you know that the income from that has really put my family in a financial position to, be able to pay for an elderly parent's elder care or allowed a parent to stay home with the kids and not have to pay for childcare. So it's just really rewarding when clients let us know how the income from these and us teaching them how to do it has impacted their lives and changed their lives and made them financially independent. So it's really just more of a rewarding thing at this point.
That's awesome answer.
That's great.
It's absolutely great.
Yeah.
So I know you've mentioned a couple of times, and Jack, I know you wanted to hit her with it. How does someone manage something this size? How do you build this? I imagine it's got to be systems and processes. What is the secret sauce you want to share with everybody at listening on that?
Everything is a system, and then getting upstream of things is definitely a big thing. So I can't remember who the author of the book Upstream is offhand, but definitely check that out because I'm about to quote it. I don't know why I can't remember the author.
You're jumping ahead to the book question.
Yeah. So it's called Upstream. And basically, if a problem happens 3 times or if a situation arises 3 times, then that means it's time for you to get upstream of that and stop it before it keeps happening. So anytime we've had a bottleneck or like, we don't have enough hours in the day to have consultations with all the new clients coming in, then, we're starting to do group consultations and things like that. So if the problem has arisen more than 3 times, then I figure out a way to get out in front of it. So a lot of that, and then just a lot of setting up systems and just repeatable systems specifically is most important. But a lot of it, that we didn't set out to start a huge real estate company. That was not the goal. My goal was to not have to work in a job that I hated. And we had a few real estate investments. And I said, oh, well, I can sell like 10 houses a year and make a great living. And then it ended up, I was doing our own deals. And then our friends were like, how much are you making on these Airbnbs? I want one, teach me how to do it. And then it was clients that I didn't know saying, oh, I want one, teach me how to do it. And then it grew into this huge, almost $1 billion company. So it's awesome. It was not purposeful, but here we are.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that book is Upstream, The Quest to Solve Problems Before They Happen by Dan Heath.
Yes.
There we go. Shout out. And if you get that to Chrissy, we can get that
we'll
in the show
link
notes.
In the show notes, absolutely. But just going back to the very first one, how did that first deal happen for you?
My first deal, so we have 105 doors now, and my first deal was just 5 years ago, so it wasn't that long ago. And it was actually a long-term rental. So our first deal was long-term. Our second deal was short-term. And we were moving from New York City to Nashville. I don't live in Nashville anymore. I live in Destin, Florida. It's a lot better. But we were moving from New York City to Nashville. And our real estate agent at the time, I was going back to get my master's. My husband was just transferring from his job in New York to Nashville. And our real estate agent was trying to get us to buy in this super fast appreciating hipster area of Nashville called East Nashville. And she was telling us, oh, these houses are appreciating like $100,000 a year. You will make so much money in appreciation if you buy over here. You should buy over here. And we were like, we just came from New York City. We're moving to Tennessee. We want to go out in the country. We're sick of neighbors. So we bought out in the country. And then we thought, well, you know what? Maybe there was something to that buying in the fast appreciating area. We have a little bit of money. Like maybe we should buy one of these things. And then one day when we have kids and they need to go to college, we'll be able to sell it and pay for their college without having to pay out of pocket. And we thought we were like the smartest people ever for doing that, which is so dumb. That is not a good reason to. Appreciation is never a good reason to invest in anything, but we did it. Our first deal was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single family house just outside East Nashville in Madison, Tennessee. We paid $122,000 for it. The mortgage was $645 a month, and we were able to get $1,500 in rent. So that was like a pretty significant amount for a long term. And it was then that we said, oh, something clicked, and we just went, yeah, this is a business we want to start. So then we started reading the books and listening to the podcast and actually educating ourselves on what we had just spent our last penny doing. But from there, we ended up with our first short term because we had just a very little bit of money left, just enough money for one single family down payment. And we said, okay, well, what can we buy that's going to make us the most amount of money the fastest so that we can buy more faster? So we landed on short-term rentals, but we didn't want to do it in Nashville because the regulations there just change all the time. It's way too volatile. It's not something that we wanted to deal with. So we thought, well, where can we buy something that's just the normal thing for people to stay in a house or a condo instead of a hotel? And we had just been on vacation in the Smoky Mountains in Gatlinburg. And we said, oh, how about that? We stayed in a cabin. Everybody stays in a cabin there. Somebody owns these cabins. Why can't it be us? And so we bought one again. And back then there were not all of these education tools and courses you could buy and places you could learn. There weren't the YouTube channels. We just kind of had to figure it out ourselves. We knew that we did not want to have to pay a property manager 20 to 40% of our gross. So we just figured out a way to do it remotely. And now there's all kinds of tools that make it so much easier to do. But back then we just figured it out and it did really well, scaled from 1 to 5 over the course of about 18 months. And then 5 years later, we've got our toe in a bunch of different asset classes. We have 8 short-term rentals now in 3 markets. And then we have 3 apartment buildings. We're under contract on another 68 units worth of apartment buildings. And then we've got just a lot of single family long terms too. So we've got a little bit of everything.
I like that. And I think that's important in this stress too, because what I want to ask you, I had you on, in your opinion, what are some of the risk factors associated with short-term rentals?
Well, there's always a risk with any type of investment that you buy. So the biggest risk is if you're buying in a market that does not have very, very established regulations, then that's a really big risk. A lot of people think, oh, well, look at this market that I found. It doesn't have any regulations. This is awesome. I can go nuts. No regulations is a bad thing, because it's not if the regulations are going to happen, it's when they're going to happen, and you don't know which way they're going to go. So for me, I try to buy in markets where the regulations have been around for a long, long time, like Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, Destin, Florida, places where people have always come to stay in condos, beach houses, cabins, and not hotels, so that the regulations were established decades ago. And now short-term rentals are so woven into the fabrics of the local economies that it would just be way too detrimental to ever regulate against them. So I would say the biggest risk is definitely regulations.
Absolutely. And the reason I asked that question is, when we first got started, our first one was in Kennebunkport, Maine. Long-term tourist town, everything was established. Well, out of nowhere during COVID, they have a lot of boutique hotels that some big hedge fund out of New York came in and bought. And sure enough, they went and they rushed it overnight, short-term regulation laws. We thought it would never happen. Luckily, we were grandfathered in, but now we have to apply for a permit. We have to do this. And Avery and her great content and her tips that she provides was something we've now worked into every market as we expand outside of our multifamily and expand more into our short-term rentals. And that's why I kind of was leading you there, and I was so glad you shared that, because we just went through that. And it was scary when it was this gray area. Like, I've got 6 figures worth of bookings already lined up. I've got people already booking 2 years out. What happens if I don't get this permit now with this vague, like, one thing they put in there on us was we've been a 15% occupancy house for 300 stays. All of a sudden, they reduced our occupancy down to 12 by whatever internal regulations they just passed. So go back, listen to everything Avery just said. It is crucial. It's a really good tip. It's worth its weight in gold if you get nothing else out of that. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to touch on too is originally I started investing in addition to the things that I've mentioned before, a couple of things that started me for real estate investing is I went to North Conway in New Hampshire. What was it, the White Mountains?
Yep.
Stayed there for, I think, 4 days, and it was like $2,600. And it was 4 days, and that's more than my mortgage on my house. And that's when I was like, all right, the recent example that I talked about in a couple episodes back about the individual who had a bunch of houses in an exclusive town. But then I saw that, and I was like, I have to get into this. But then I started getting weary of the risks and things of that nature, and basically lost out on tons of money over the past 5 years by not investing in short-term rentals.
By not taking the risk.
Yeah, so I'm doing it now. We're getting after it. So just
time to pull the trigger.
Yeah,
I like it. Yes, definitely go back and listen to that. So where do you see all this going? Where do you want to end up? Because you said something we're always big on here is the why. What is the why to do all this? Why do we take on this crazy risk? And your why has changed. Where do you see this going? What do the next 5 years look like for Avery and her family and her team?
Ooh, that's a tough one, because it just changes so much. Like you said, the real estate market has changed in the past 2 years, and it's going to change some more. So for me, I think for me and my family and me, I think is the correct. We would like.
Listen, he can't read. You're fine, so don't worry about it. So.
Yeah. So we would like to get to $1 million a year in our long-term portfolio. So we're at $800 a year in our short-term, but we would like to get our long-term to that also. And then, so I don't know what we'll do then. We'll probably have a new goal.
Yeah.
And then for the short-term shop, we would like to this year get probably 5 more markets open.
All right, I like it. That's so exciting. And we'll definitely share all that, which is a perfect segue into talk to us a little bit about the book. What's going on with that? Where can people pick it up? What is I got a ton of gems out of it, and we'll share, and we'll definitely link to it, but that's a big task, taking on a book, putting it out there. And I think so often with entrepreneurs, we think we're safeguarding these secrets, when in reality, every successful entrepreneur I've met, yourself included, we're an open resource. We're out there doing it because we know most people won't execute, but those that do, we want to be surrounded by them. So talk to us a little bit about the book and where that kind of came about and the logic there.
Yeah. So actually Bigger Pockets approached me and asked me to write it. I've always been really involved with Bigger Pockets. I've spoken at their conferences a few times. I'm real active on their forums. So
awesome.
They said, we think the time is right for a short-term rental book, and we think that you'd be a great person to write it. And I said, of course, I would love to. I was 4 months pregnant with my son at that time.
Oh, wow.
And they said, okay, well, here's the deal. This was like May of 2020. And they said, here's the deal, though. We need it done by December. So 6 months. And I already had a 2-year-old. And then, of course, job and everything else. So I woke up at 4:00 every morning and wrote. It was my goal, write at least 10 pages every day and then go back through it when you're done. And I was really trying to not listen to myself talk too much and just kind of get to the point. And got that done. And it ended up being, it was an Amazon bestseller in 4 categories, which real estate investing and stuff like that is a small category. It's not like a Danielle Steele novel, but it's still pretty cool. It felt like a glitch in the matrix.
Listen, that's awesome. Okay.
Don't
That's
downplay
awesome.
it.
Yeah, don't downplay it. That's awesome. That's unbelievable. Good. You're a rock star. Are you kidding me? That is great. And where can people pick that up? So on BP, on Amazon, anywhere else that they can pick that up?
Anywhere that you buy books. So Barnes & Noble, they have hard copies, they actually have it in bookstores, which is the weirdest thing in the world to me. So Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Audible, the Bigger Pockets store. I think it's a little bit cheaper in the Bigger Pockets store because it's direct to the publisher. And I think that's it.
So I'll definitely check that out.
Do you ever just walk into Barnes & Noble and just go stare at your book?
That's
and be
me.
I wrote that.
That's me right now.
Yeah. So, this is really embarrassing, actually. So my husband wrote a book years ago about something entirely different. And he said, if you go, and he was living in New York at the time when he wrote it, and I guess it worked differently in New York, but he said, if you go to the Barnes & Noble and say, hey, I'm an author, I wrote this book, can I sign it? He said, they'll give you a pen and they'll do this whole thing. And it's cool. And they'll be super excited and they'll put your book in the author signature section. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. And so I went, there's a Barnes & Noble in Destin. And I was like, well, I need to make sure that it's there first. So I called him. I was like, hey, do you have Short-Term Rental, Long-Term Wealth by Avery Carl? I was all embarrassed. And they're like, yeah, we do. I'm like, okay, cool. And they're like, do you want us to hold it for you? I'm like, no, I just wanted to know. And so I went in and I saw it and walked up and down the aisle a few times because I was so embarrassed.
She's casing the joint.
Yeah. So I circled it like a shark for 20 minutes. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. So I grabbed it and I went to the desk and I was like, hey, I wrote this. So I would love to sign it for you guys. She's like, oh, did you call 20 minutes ago? I'm like, and she said, I knew it was you because it said Avery Carl on the caller ID. And I was like, oh my God. And she was not impressed. She was the most unimpressed. She wanted to go back to her video games or whatever. And I was like, all right, let me just sign this and put it back. And now I'm embarrassed and I'm never going to go in Barnes & Noble again.
That is far and away one of the best stories we've had on the podcast so far. So you get kudos for that too. So we'll definitely link to that. This is a perfect segue though. So, and it might be one you already mentioned. So now we want another one. We're going to put you on the hot seat. What is another book or resource you would recommend to our listeners?
David Green's book, Long Distance Real Estate Investing. That's a really good complement to my book. Actually, my book's a complement to his. His is the real book. Mine's the supplemental. But that's a really good one because a lot of our clients, a lot of people buying short-term rentals anyway are buying them remotely. So that's a really good one to read to kind of get your ducks in a row and get your head in the right space in terms of buying something remotely.
I love that. I think that was.
I wish that book was written before I started investing long distance.
He wouldn't have pulled the trigger anyways. You got to be like Avery. You got to get after it. You're going to walk into Barnes & Noble and be that guy.
I read that book and I was like, oh yeah.
So that's awesome. So all right. So now what we got coming up is the big three. We're going to put you on the hot seat. But first, before we do that, let's hear who the segment is brought to us by.
It's now time for the Big Three segment, brought to you by QS Private Lending. Are you looking to finance your next deal quickly and reliably with less hassle and paperwork? QS Private Lending is one of the oldest and largest hard money lenders to real estate investors in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. Our quick and simple short-term loans require no appraisals and have enabled hundreds of builders and investors to profitably acquire and renovate thousands of residential and commercial properties. To experience the QS difference for yourself, call or text Luke Conroy today at 315-323-0250. That's 315-323-0250. QS Private Lending.
Okay, it is time for the big three.
Put her on the hot seat.
3 questions we ask every guest every week, and I'll kick it off with the college question. So, Avery, in your opinion, is college worth it?
That is a very difficult question. I have an undergrad from University of Texas and a master's degree from a private university in Nashville called Belmont University. And I do not use a lot of it in anything that I do every day. Most of what I do every day, I learned from listening to podcasts from other investors and things like that, just content that's out there, books. But I'm a person who I just really like school. So for me, it was worth it, but it's probably not going to be worth it for everyone, because I was also lucky that my family paid for me to go to college. So I didn't have to deal with the student loans and things. So, getting yourself into that much debt might not be worth it unless you're, becoming some sort of crazy doctor who you're going to be able to pay it off really quickly and start investing really quickly. But I would say it may not be.
That's a great answer, which is perfect because it says, what is one piece of actionable advice you go back and give to your 18-year-old self?
Oh gosh, so many things.
Don't walk into Barnes and Noble. No.
Don't
call ahead.
Tip my hand.
That's one of those things that I'll wake up in the middle of the night and be embarrassed about.
Well, I think it was awesome. So
yeah. So for my 18-year-old self, so I was bartending on 6th Street in Austin when I was 18, and a lot of my older colleagues who had been bartending for 10 years, they were in their late 20s, and had some money saved up, were buying these houses in East Austin for $70,000. And I totally could have bought one. I had the income to do it. And I just, in my stupid 18-year-old brain, it wasn't, why would you buy a house if it's not as nice as your parents' house? Why would you buy something like that? And it was just so dumb. And then they ended up, some of them still own their houses, but most of them unloaded them for $500,000 or $800,000. And wow. I'm like, man, that was stupid. I should have started earlier. I know everybody says that, but at the same time, I wanted to tour in rock bands and drink tequila all the time at that age. So I probably did not have what it took to have gotten started then anyway. So
the tagline is from tequila groupie to published author and entrepreneur rock star. There it is. We just nailed it.
Well, I was the guitar player, so I had my own groupies.
Look at that. There it is. You continue to amaze me. You're better than I even thought. All right, hit it with the hard one.
All right, the last question of the big 3. What is one thing you would want your 90-year-old self to say to you?
That there's nothing that you should have done that didn't, nothing that you wish you would have done. You did it all. I want her to be able to say you did it all. And most importantly, that I was a good parent. That's the most important to me.
I like that.
You are really a rock star. That's the one that trips everybody up, and you crushed that one. So that tells me you're very intentionally focused with it. That was a great answer. All right, so where can people get in touch with you? Where can they learn more about you and everything you got going on?
Yeah, so follow us on social media. Instagram at the ShortTerm Shop. We have a YouTube channel at the ShortTerm Shop. And if you want to schedule a consultation, if you want to buy a house with us and have us teach you how to manage it, go to theshorttermshop.com and schedule a consultation.
Great
All
website.
Right. So before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to tell the listeners?
I don't think so. I think we covered it all.
Perfect.
We ran through it. All right, Jack, where can people learn more about Tell Us Why?
Well, you got to hit up our new website, telluswhypodcast.com. And if you don't already follow us on social media, you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, and basically every social media platform there is. All the links are in the description below.
And if you want to join us in person, we record most Wednesdays at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe in Salem, New Hampshire. We'd love to have you come on down.
All right, I'll wrap it up with the quote of the week. When you really want something, the whole universe conspires to help you achieve it. I can't say this name, but it's from the
Alchemist.
Yeah. All right.
She is good. Thank you for being here, Avery.
That's it for today. Be sure to join us for next week's episode. And until next week,
bet on yourself.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.